Welcome to Bridging Generations in Sales and Outreach. I am your host, Butch Nicholson, and I am really glad to have you with us today. I'm really excited about the shows that we've had so far this year. And what I wanted to do today is just hit some of the highlights from those shows because there's some good stuff that we can all learn from. And, the purpose of this show is to make sales. We do that by understanding right now there are probably at least three and maybe as many as five generations that you're selling to if you're in sales. You've got baby boomers, you've gotten a new generation that has just become popular, Gen Jones. And what they've done is split baby boomers to people born from 1945 to 1954. And then the new category, Gen Jones, which is 1955 to 1964. And I really like the Gen Jones because now I'm not a baby boomer. On the other hand, where Gen Jones comes from, it can be a little embarrassing. And it's the keeping up with the Joneses generation. Then you've got the Gen Xers and you even have millennials, very important buying positions these days. There was a study done a couple of years ago that said the average B2B buyer was 39 years old. That's a millennial. Another big change, that's one big change. The other big change in sales is a study showed, and this was just last year, that the average buyer had done 75% of their research before they wanted to talk to a salesperson. 75%. And if you're of the older generation, back in the day, the customer had to come to us to get any information. And today, there's no information they can't find with their computer and probably on their phone. So let's talk about a few things that we've talked about in the last couple of shows. One of the things that really stood out for me, and these are really kind of my talking points that came together from all the shows. Sales isn't any harder. It's just different. And I heard somebody the other day talking about sales is hard. Sales is hard. And sales isn't easy, but it's not hard. And it's not harder now than it was if you understand why people buy and if you understand the mistakes people are making. But I will tell you this, if you don't understand the buyers today, you're losing before you sit down. And you're losing deals you shouldn't lose because you may well have the best product. So we've had three guests so far this year. We had Harrison O'Neill, Harrison may be a millennial. He was a young Gen Xer at that. We had Robert and Yuta Bramble, which was a real treat. Robert's Yuta's father. And so you can imagine the generation spread there. And I'll share you some real differences that they have put the strengths of each of those differences together to have an unbelievably powerful team. And Natalie Corona, as she says, like the beer, really, she's in HR and she shared some great things, not necessarily as much from an HR perspective, but as how you deal with the different generation, how you have to deal with the different generations in a different way. So let's hop right in. Harrison pointed out something that I hadn't thought about, but when he said it, I thought, you know what, that's exactly true. I'm going to cheat a little bit today with my notes because I can't keep up with what five other people said. He said, people jump to the solutions too fast. And your normal result when you do that is let me think about it. And I believe what Harrison meant and what he talked about was you've got to, what a customer is looking for, and I believe in this day and time, is they're not looking for a product. They're looking for a solution. And if you have an identified problem, you can't provide a solution. And you may have the latest, greatest widget, but if the latest, greatest widget doesn't solve the buyer's problem, frankly, you're wasting your time and his. So the first thing I believe you have to do is you have to find out and understand what the buyer's problem is. And if you have a solution, you can certainly offer that solution. But if you don't know the problem, you're just talking. Another thing that we talked about with Harrison was, and Rob, and it's interesting because Rob Brandel talked about this also. And my father, who was a great salesman, I heard him say this 1,000 times. The buyer has to want it or need it, or you don't need to talk to them, because every sale is driven by somebody who wants it or they need it. And a want is different than a need. That's a different conversation for now. But the most important thing you need to find out before you start talking about your wonderful solution is, what's the problem? Do they want to fix it? Do they need to fix it? And does my product or service do that? So that's I would say the number one takeaway from all of these shows together. Oh, and Rob said something. I'm gonna read this because I want to get it exactly right. He said products could carry a sale in the old days. If you could have the best product. And Rob's was in the furniture, well, still is in the furniture business. But he said now buyer clarity drives the sale. So if that buyer clarity does that solve a problem that I have? And another thing that Rob pointed out was that most deals stall not because of objections from the buyer, but for misalignment. The solution, the product, the whatever it is that the salesman have just doesn't line up with the buyer to solve their problem. So I want to talk about Rob and Yuta, which was if you haven't seen that show, I definitely recommend you go back and take a look at it. So Rob is the old school of the old school, although he's not near as old as me. And Rob started in the furniture business. When he started, his parents had a vegetable stand, and he made some furniture, and he started selling it right next to the vegetable stand. And early on, it was really about carrying around a notebook with a lot of pictures in it and knocking on doors. And the furniture industry has a huge trade show every year in High Point, North Carolina, in the U.S. And Rob told us that probably 80% of his business came from that show and relationships that he built in that show. And Rob talked about the importance of maintaining relationships over the years. But regardless of how good your relationships are, if you don't have a quality product, people will love you, but they'll tell you they love you, but they're not buying. So you still have to have a quality product, but the relationships are absolutely paramount. And then he had a son, Yuta, and Yuta shared some good stories with us. Yuta was when he was little, and I can't remember exactly, but I think he said when he was 6 or 8 years old, he started going to trade shows with his dad and was in and out, running around the booths, but really, had a feeling that the furniture business may be for him. And he moved to Bali, where his mother was. It was really an interesting call we had. So Rob was in Los Angeles, California. I was in Atlanta, Georgia. Ala, who is our producer, was in Cairo, Egypt, and Yuta was in Bali. So we had 4 people on the call and a 12-hour difference in times. It was that was interesting, and thanks to Allah, all the technology worked. Yuta's built a great business in Bali, and it is 100% from social media. He realized that they could actually help build trust early on with the digital presence that they had, with the content they were producing. And what Yuta said was, content equals awareness, which triggers consideration, which considers conversion. So they started with TikTok videos, and I can't remember the exact number, but he has 4 or 5 guys that work with him, and they do TikTok videos around the furniture, around the town, and they've had they've done thousands and thousands of likes and impressions. So it's one of the things you just said was one of the nice things about social media is it's easy to change. If something doesn't work, you can just stop doing it pretty quick. So that's one of the real advantages there. And it really proves this. Rob is as old school as you can be. Yuta is his business is 100% based on social media. That's about as far apart as you can get, yet they're both successful, and together they have a super successful business. So it goes to show that there is no one way to do it. There are multiple ways to be successful in sales. You just got to find the right way for you and the right way for your customers. And then we had kind of a shift with Natalie Corona. Natalie's been a friend of mine for a couple of years, and she is a highly motivated bundle of energy. And she shared one of the biggest problems I believe that people have in sales, and it is also a real problem in HR, which is where she works. So she works for HR, but she sells too. But what she shared with us is a problem that you have, a problem that people have is you can't stereotype people without limiting the possibilities for them. Every person baby boomer age doesn't act like a baby boomer. Every person that is a millennial doesn't act like a millennial. And what she said was, when you sell a label, you miss the person. And I believe that that's 100% true. You've got to take the time to understand the person and just a relationship. And you've got to take the time to understand a buyer when you're trying to make a sale. And this was an important highlight that she pointed out. Uh, she said, boomers buy from trust and relationships, or value trust and relationships. She didn't have Gen Xers in here. I'm sorry, Gen Jones, but Gen X wants efficiency and independence, and young buyers want speed, so they want digital. So that's what made me think, and this is just an observation I had. In sales, you've got to figure out the best way to communicate up front, because if you don't communicate the proper way up front, you've lost right away. And it takes a little bit of training, it takes a little bit of patience, and it also takes an understanding that you're not going to sell everybody. And they might be a great prospect for somebody else, but it's just not you. Another thing I talked about with all four guests on the shows, and this is something I believe in, and it's just been true over and over for me, is the power of storytelling. And one of the things that I have found, and Harrison, Natalie, Rob, and Yuta all talked about it, and that is people will buy your story before they'll buy your product. People like to hear stories about success, and people like to hear people don't really like to hear stories about failures, but they like to hear what you learned from a failure, and it allowed you to use what you learned to be successful down the road, to make a sale down the road. So it's a quick rundown here. Stop using one sale for everybody. One script doesn't work anymore. Number two, boomers equal credibility, Gen Jonesers logic, and Gen X direct. And I would say, I would add to this, millennials social. uh, and the real advantage today, and these were insights from the different guests. Rob said trust and reputation is important. Yuta said visibility and storytelling. And Natalie said communication awareness. And what I would say from the shows we've had and some that we had before the last few weeks, there is no one right way. And the people who do best in sales are the people who take the old school and the new school, take the best of both, figure out how that works best for them. And those are your sales leaders. Relationships still win. It's just a matter of they're established in different ways. You've got Rob, who carried a book around and showed it to people and built his relationships. And you got Yuta, who is all social, and together they have a great company. If you're not willing, or you don't adjust your approach, you're just running into friction. And just accept the fact that you have to change. What you've done is not going to work anymore. Whether you're old or young, you've got to accept and incorporate the other into your approach. And lastly, this isn't about taking huge changes, just some small changes in your communication style, some small changes in your questioning, some small changing and really caring about the people that you're talking with, and helping them to understand that you really care about solving their problems, can be a game changer. So we've done some 40 episodes, bridging generation in sales and outreach, and we're really grateful for that. We've got some new things coming up that we're very excited about. Uh, don't forget, if you missed the show one week, you can see it here on LinkedIn, or you can see it on our YouTube page, or our YouTube show, which is Bridging Generations in Sales and Outreach. One thing I always like to say at the end of the show, if you believe I can help you in any way, please let me know. And if I can, one thing I promise you is if I can't help you, I probably know somebody who can, and I'll be happy to introduce you to them. So from next week, just remember this: there's no one right way. Find the right way for you. Combine the old school wisdom and the new school techniques and tools, and that's how you'll create